luxury car showroom buzzes with idle chatter and polished ambition, but beneath the chrome and glass something rotten lingers. Let us know in the comments section below. Have you ever been judged by how you looked instead of who you are? Her heels clicked softly against the white marble floor, the sound barely registering beneath the pulse of ambient jazz spilling from hidden ceiling speakers. Lydia Bellinger walked past a glittering row of high-end coupes, her posture casual, her gaze sharp. She wore black jeans, a plain hoodie, and white sneakers, the kind of outfit that invited assumptions. And that's exactly what she wanted. No one recognized her. Good. The showroom gleamed under the noon sun, each car detailed to perfection, their bodies catching light like diamonds. Lydia drifted from one model to the next, trailing her fingers across cold steel, soaking in the atmosphere she had curated for over a decade. Except this time, she wasn't looking at cars. She was watching people. The man behind the main desk, tall, white, mid-30s, eyed her with the kind of condescension she could spot a mile away. He didn't even bother to smile. He looked her up and down once, wrote her off, and went back to his phone. Brandon Ellis, sales manager. She knew his name before she stepped inside, knew his numbers, his quarterly performance, even the fact that he'd recently been written up for making a crude joke about a woman who came in to test drive a car alone. And yet, she hadn't fired him. Not yet. This, right here, was her moment of clarity. Lydia moved toward the glass case displaying limited edition keys like they were fine jewelry. She felt Brandon's eyes flicker in her direction again, this time with irritation. "You need help or something?" he finally asked, not looking up. Lydia didn't answer right away. Instead, she ran her fingers along the velvet lining of the display and smiled. "I'm just browsing," she said. "You sure you're in the right place?" he replied, not even trying to disguise the tone. She turned to him slowly, letting the silence between them stretch long enough for discomfort to settle in. "Why wouldn't I be?" Brandon leaned back in his chair, tapping his phone with one hand and gesturing lazily with the other. "Look, I don't mean anything by it, but cars here start at $80 K. Most people schedule appointments, test drives, and credit checks and all that." "Is that right?" Lydia said, her voice smooth. Another sales associate walked by, a Latina woman in her 20s named Jasmine Patel. She paused when she saw Lydia, her eyes narrowing slightly in recognition. Jasmine had seen the company's internal newsletter. Her mouth opened slightly like she wanted to say something, but then she hesitated. Lydia gave the subtlest shake of her head. "Not yet." A young couple entered the dealership, white, both dressed in business casual. Brandon straightened up, stood, and practically jogged to greet them. "Hi there, welcome to Monroe Luxury Auto. I'm Brendan, how can I help you today?" Lydia stood near the corner, watching the shift in his energy. His voice was syrupy, posture suddenly respectful. The couple barely glanced at her, assuming she worked there, or worse, was in the wrong place. She'd seen it 1,000 times. Every time she'd sent mystery shoppers, every complaint filed in HR. And still, people like Brandon thrived. Lydia walked over to a sleek black sedan, a custom design with bulletproof windows, adaptive suspension, and Italian leather interiors. She opened the driver's side door and slipped in without asking. The scent of new leather filled her lungs. She exhaled, resting her hands on the steering wheel. This wasn't just a car, it was her legacy. Her late mother had taught her how to rebuild an engine before she could drive one. Every bolt, every stitch, every gleam of that dashboard screen carried her mother's fingerprints. Brandon noticed her in the car and jogged over. "Hey, ma'am, you can't just get in the car like that," he barked. Lydia looked at him through the window, then slowly stepped out. "You said it starts at 80K, she said, so I figured I'd take a closer look before I drop 6 figures. Brandon scoffed. "Okay, well, unless you're planning to buy today, maybe you could leave the interior for the serious buyers." Lydia raised an eyebrow. Are you the gatekeeper of serious money? I'm the sales manager, he snapped, puffing his chest. And I've been here long enough to know when someone's wasting our time. You sure about that? She said. You must be real good at your job. Before he could answer, Jasmine approached, cautiously. Hi there, ma'am, she said, voice measured. Would you like something to drink? Coffee, water, sparkling maybe? Lydia nodded with a smile. Sparkling water would be great, thank you, Jasmine. Brandon blinked. You know her name? Why wouldn't I? Jasmine vanished toward the break room, biting her lip to keep from smiling. Brandon, flustered now, looked around like he was missing something. You know what, he said, adjusting his collar. If you're seriously interested, I guess I could check the inventory, but no test drives today, not without a verified pre-approval. Lydia crossed her arms. That your policy or just the one you use on people who look like me? He froze. She didn't wait for an answer. Instead, she turned and walked toward the hallway leading to the back offices. The security camera above blinked red. She made sure it caught her looking straight up into the lens and smiling. Upstairs, behind smoked glass doors, was a private office. Her office. She wouldn't go there yet. Today was about witnessing. A woman in customer service waved at her. Lydia gave a subtle wave back. That one would stay. From her purse, she pulled out a slim phone and typed a few lines into a secure employee review app. A score. A timestamp. A quote. Brandon turned back to the couple, faking laughter. Lydia walked to the far end of the floor, where her newest model, an electric SUV prototype, sat on a rotating platform. A small child pressed his nose against the glass from outside. His mother, a black woman in scrubs, smiled at him but hesitated before entering. Lydia walked to the door and held it open for them. You should come in, she said. You'd be surprised how far dreams can drive you. The mother smiled politely, unsure whether Lydia worked there or not. Lydia watched as they walked in. Jasmine met them halfway, kneeling beside the boy to show him the touchscreen inside the car. The mother's smile widened, and Lydia's fingers tightened around her phone. Tomorrow she would return, but not in sneakers. Tomorrow she'd walk in as Lydia Bellinger, CEO, and someone was getting fired. But today she was just a mirror, and the reflection was ugly. The lights inside the showroom dimmed subtly as the afternoon sun shifted, casting long streaks of golden light across the polished floor. Lydia sat on the customer lounge couch, legs crossed, sipping the sparkling water Jasmine had brought her. The bubbles fizzed softly against the edge of the cup. Her phone was still in her hand, but she hadn't touched it in minutes. She was watching, listening, measuring the soul of her business. A father in a construction uniform walked in next. His boots were muddy, jeans worn, hands rough and cracked. He nodded politely at the front desk, but Brandon didn't even glance up. The man cleared his throat and walked over to a car, peering inside with the curiosity of someone who'd been dreaming of this moment for years. Still, no one came. Brandon was too busy charming the couple from earlier, pointing out the sleek lines of a convertible like he was auditioning for a reality show. Lydia shook her head slightly. She'd seen him do the same thing in company promotional reels. Laughing too loud, standing too close, always selling the fantasy, but only to the ones he thought belonged in it. The man in boots hesitated near the SUV, then turned to leave. Lydia stood. "Excuse me, sir," she called gently, stepping toward him. He paused. "Ma'am, looking for someone to help you?" she asked. He chuckled under his breath. "Tried to be, but I guess I'm not dressed right." Belina smiled, her eyes soft. "You know what they say. Mud on your boots means you've got somewhere to be and work to do. That's the kind of customer we like." The man looked at her, confused for a second, then nodded with a grateful smile. "I was just curious about financing on that big electric SUV there. My wife and I have been saving up for something reliable, something safer for our twins." Lydia walked beside him to the vehicle. Good choice. That one's got a 5-star safety rating, dual motor design, adaptive braking. Brandon interrupted from across the floor. Hey man, you can't show people around, you're not staff. Lydia turned her head, not fully, just enough to give him her profile. I didn't know casual conversation was considered staff work, she replied evenly. Brandon's face stiffened. He walked over, addressing the man instead. Sir, I can help you with any questions. You looking for something more affordable? We've got a pre-owned section in our lot across the street. The man shifted awkwardly. I was actually just looking, thanks. Brandon turned back to Lydia, a tight smile forming. I'll take it from here. I'm sure you will, she said, her voice like a warning wrapped in silk. Lydia stepped back toward the lounge as the man gave her a grateful nod. Jasmine was standing near the coffee machine, pretending to refill a stack of paper cups, but her eyes hadn't left them. She caught Lydia's glance and mouthed, I saw everything. Lydia gave her the tiniest wink. A phone buzzed in Lydia's pocket. An encrypted message from Tyrell Bishop, her COO and oldest friend. She opened it discreetly. Everything in place. HR review in 48 hours. You still going undercover tomorrow? She texted back. One more day in the shadows. Then the lights come on. She slid the phone away just in time to hear Brandon's voice booming again, this time talking about luxury interiors and payment plans to a different customer. It was all a performance. But Lydia had learned that even actors eventually forget when the cameras are rolling. The showroom doors opened again. This time an elderly black couple entered, dressed neatly. Him in a crisp polo and loafers, her in a floral dress and sun hat. Lydia recognized them instantly. Mr. and Mrs. Tennyson. Long-time customers. Bought their first vehicle from her when she was still taking orders out of a rented warehouse. Jasmine spotted them too and moved quickly. Mr. and Mrs. T, she called out. So glad to see you again. They both smiled, eyes lighting up. Brandon, seeing Jasmine greet them, frowned and stepped in. Hi there, he said, plastering on his showroom grin. Welcome. Looking for something new today? Mrs. Tennyson smiled sweetly. We are, but we were hoping to work with Lydia if she's around. Brandon blinked. Lydia? Yes, dear, Lydia Bellinger. She always takes such good care of us. He paused. I don't believe we have anyone by that name working today. Lydia stood quietly behind a nearby display, watching. Mrs. Tennyson looked disappointed. Oh, that's all right. We'll come back another day then. Jasmine's voice lifted. Actually, she turned and looked right at Lydia. I believe she might be here after all. Brandon's brows pulled together. What are you talking about? Jasmine didn't answer him. She just stepped to the side, eyes inviting Lydia forward. Lydia walked up to the couple and smiled. Mr. and Mrs. Tennyson, you're looking amazing. Mrs. Tennyson gasped. There she is. Mr. Tennyson let out a laugh. We thought you left us for the big leagues, Lydia. Brandon stood frozen, mouth slightly open, his mind racing to connect the dots. Lydia embraced them both briefly, then turned to Brandon. I'm sorry, she said. Have we officially met? His mouth opened, but no sound came. This is Lydia Bellinger, Jasmine said, unable to contain the pride in her voice anymore. The Lydia, our CEO. Brandon's expression collapsed into something small, almost childlike. Shock, shame, and fear warred across his face. Lydia looked at him directly for the first time that day, not through a veil of disguise, not through the eyes of a mystery shopper or anonymous boss, but as herself. Brandon, she said, her tone calm but firm, why don't you take the rest of the day off? He stammered. Mrs. Bellinger, I didn't know. That's the problem, she said. You never bother to know. The room was silent. She turned back to the Tennysons with a warm smile. Now, let's take a look at that new model, shall we? Jasmine walked beside them, eyes shining. The elderly couple followed Lydia, chatting like nothing had just shifted in the air. But it had. Oh, it had. And tomorrow, when Lydia Bellinger returned, not in sneakers, not in hoodies, but in her rightful skin, this place would never be the same again. The hum of conversation inside Monroe Luxury Auto felt different the next morning, tighter, more cautious, as if the very air had caught wind of something coming and decided to hold its breath. Everyone knew the regional director was visiting that day. That was the official story floating around. Brandon had spread it himself in the staff group chat at 7 a.m., trying to reassert authority, still unsure if yesterday was real or just a nightmare dressed as a jogger in sneakers. But Lydia Bellinger didn't do warnings. She did reveals. At exactly 10 a.m., the glass doors opened, and in walked a different woman than the one who'd stood beside the limited edition sedan just 24 hours ago. This Lydia wore a white pantsuit tailored so perfectly it looked like it was sewn onto her body. Her heels were sharp and unapologetic, tapping out a rhythm of arrival across the polished floors. Her curls framed her face like a halo that dared anyone to reach for it. She didn't wear a name tag. She didn't have to. Brandon spotted her from the break room and nearly dropped his coffee. She didn't stop at the front desk. She didn't pause to be greeted. She walked straight through the center of the showroom like it belonged to her, which, of course, it did. Jasmine met her halfway, hands clasped, eyes wide with silent excitement. Lydia smiled and nodded. "Morning, Jasmine," she said, casual and calm. "Good morning, Ms. Bellinger," Jasmine replied, standing taller than she ever had before. "Are the files I requested ready?" "They're in your office, exactly as you asked." "And the others?" "Already here." Lydia's smile widened just slightly. "Perfect, let's begin." She turned toward the glass-walled conference room near the back of the dealership. Inside, 3 people sat waiting. Tyrell Bishop, her COO and lifelong friend in a charcoal gray suit. Kendra Liu, head of HR compliance, with a laptop already open. And Mr. Miles, the company's legal advisor, tapping a pen methodically against a stack of documents. They all stood as Lydia entered. "Morning, everyone," she said. "Let's clean house." While they prepared, Lydia remained standing. She watched the staff through the glass like a surgeon watching vital signs. A receptionist checked her lipstick in the reflection of a sedan. A junior sales rep polished an already spotless hood, nervous energy bleeding from his every movement. The showroom buzzed like a hive before the storm. And then Brandon walked in. He saw her standing at the head of the table through the glass, his mouth opened slightly, and for a moment Lydia thought he might bolt. But he didn't. Brandon squared his shoulders, brushed his blazer, and walked straight toward the conference room, trying to project the calm of a man who had not made the fatal error of disrespecting his boss in front of half the dealership the day before. He knocked twice, then opened the door. "Ms. Bellinger," he said, "I wasn't aware we had a meeting this morning." "You didn't," she replied, gesturing for him to sit. "Have a seat, Brandon." He hesitated, but obeyed. His palms were already sweating. "I want to talk to you about yesterday," she said. I want to sincerely apologize," he said, rushing the words. "I had no idea it was you. Obviously, if I'd known, I never—" "That's the point," she cut in, voice calm but loaded. "You didn't know, which is exactly why it matters." Brendan blinked, mouth slightly agape. "You see, Brandon, you don't get to treat people with dignity only when you know they can sign your paychecks. That's not professionalism. That's opportunism. I was under pressure." "No," Lydia said, sharper now. "You were under bias. And it's not just what you said to me. It's how you ignored a construction worker who walked in minutes later. It's how you assumed the older black couple were mistaken when they asked for me by name." Brandon turned pale. Tyrell leaned forward slightly, expression unreadable. "I've seen the complaints," Lydia continued. "The write-ups, the exit interviews. It's not an isolated incident, Brandon. You've built a pattern, and that pattern has no place in my company." Kendra tapped her laptop once, pivoting it toward Brandon. A file opened. Emails. Complaints. Notes from customers who'd been spoken down to, ignored, redirected elsewhere. All the things Lydia had already known, but now it was in ink, time-stamped and undeniable. I never meant to offend anyone, Brandon said, eyes darting between the documents. I was trying to keep things professional. There's a certain image we aim for, right? I mean, high-end clients, high-end service. Lydia raised a hand. That image you're talking about, you've warped it into something toxic. You sold cars, Brandon, but you cost us something far more important. Trust. Silence. Miles slid a folder across the table. Brandon opened it and read the first line. His heart dropped. Effective immediately. Termination of employment. You'll be paid your remaining PTO, Miles said. And we ask that you not return to this location. Security will walk you to your car. Brandon looked up at Lydia, stunned. You're actually firing me? Lydia leaned forward, her voice barely above a whisper but sharp enough to cut steel. No, Brandon, you fired yourself. I'm just doing the paperwork. The room was still for a long moment. Then Brandon stood, hands trembling, and without another word left the room. As the door closed behind him, Jasmine walked by with 2 customers, giving Lydia the briefest nod. Terrell exhaled slowly. That's 1 down. Not just him, Lydia said. I want retraining scheduled for the entire team, and I want full diversity, bias, and inclusive service training implemented across every single branch, starting next quarter. Kendra nodded, already typing. Also, Lydia added, no more mystery shoppers. From now on, we become the shoppers, monthly, unannounced. Tyrell smiled. You're really doing this. We're not here to sell cars, we're here to serve people. If we can't do that right, we don't deserve to be in business. There was a silence in the room, not from tension but from gravity. Lydia wasn't just running a dealership anymore. She was setting a standard. An hour later, Lydia walked the floor of her showroom like it was sacred ground. She greeted the receptionist by name, asked about her niece's surgery, checked in with the new junior sales associate, and gave him advice on closing conversations. When a black teenage girl came in with her dad, Lydia personally gave them a tour. Jasmine passed by once, whispering as she walked by, "This place already feels different." Lydia didn't look away from the girl, admiring the curve of a red electric coupe. She just smiled. It should. Because this time, it wasn't just about what came next. It was about what would never be allowed to happen again. The grand reopening of Monroe Luxury Auto's flagship location wasn't announced with billboards or a ribbon-cutting ceremony. Lydia Bellinger believed in quieter revolutions, those that began in the bones of a building and worked their way into the people. But word had gotten out anyway. Customers trickled in before opening, some out of curiosity, others because they'd heard whispers of something rare. A luxury showroom where everyone was treated like they belonged. The glass doors slid open at 9 a.m. sharp. This time, a black woman walked in, holding her keys like they were something sacred. She wore a floral headscarf and carried a toddler on her hip. Her eyes flicked nervously toward the front desk. Jasmine greeted her first. "Welcome to Monroe Luxury. We're so glad you're here," she said warmly. "Can I get you anything? Water, juice for your little one?" The woman blinked, caught off guard by the kindness. I was just looking. My car's outside. But I've been thinking about upgrading. I wasn't sure if I could just walk in." "You can always walk in," Jasmine said. "And today you picked the perfect day." Lydia stepped forward from a nearby desk, dressed in a dark green jumpsuit, stylish but approachable. She crouched slightly and waved at the toddler, then looked up at the woman with a smile. "You thinking about a sedan or SUV?" Lydia asked. The woman smiled shyly. "Something safe. I do a lot of late-night shifts. I'm a nurse." "Well," Lydia said, Let's make sure your ride takes care of you the way you take care of others. She led her to the new line of hybrid models, explaining features and payment options like they were planning a road trip instead of a sale. And every few minutes Lydia glanced over her shoulder, not out of habit, but pride. The showroom had changed. It didn't just look different. It felt different. The staff had shifted too. Gone were the hard stares and quiet judgments. Now, people listened. They asked better questions, and more importantly, they looked people in the eye, regardless of the brand of shoe they walked in wearing. A young white intern in training now shadowed Jasmine, scribbling notes during interactions and asking questions between customers. He had once been the kind of hire who might have parroted Brandon's scripts. Now he carried Lydia's message like gospel. See people first. In the break room, a new sign had been posted on the wall. It read, "Luxury is not what you wear, it's how you make someone feel, LB." Terrell stood near the front entrance, checking his phone and sipping espresso from a ceramic mug. When Lydia walked over, he raised an eyebrow. "You see this place?" he said, sweeping his arm toward the bustle of the floor. "It's alive again." "I see it," Lydia replied, "but more importantly, I feel it." "I think you just saved your own company." Lydia laughed lightly. "I didn't save it. I finally started leading it." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment as a father and his son took a photo next to a convertible. A teenage girl asked a female sales associate about engineering internships. A same-sex couple compared electric models without a single raised eyebrow in sight. "You know," Tyrell said, "I was worried you were going too soft. And now, I think you're a lion in pearls." Lydia grinned. "You just think that because you've seen the claws." He smirked. "Still healing from the last scratch." Jasmine walked over holding a clipboard, beaming. "Lydia," she said, "you're going to want to see this." Lydia followed her to the front desk, where a stack of comment cards and online reviews had been printed and displayed. Words like welcoming, seen, respected, and finally popped off the pages like confetti. It was one that caught her eye. It read, "I came in thinking I had to prove myself. I left feeling like I didn't have to." Signed, anonymous, black woman, first-time buyer, but not the last. Lydia's throat tightened for just a moment. This was why. This was always why. She walked back toward her office, not to retreat but to reflect. On the wall behind her desk hung a framed blueprint, one of her first dealership floor plans, hand-sketched by her and her mother on butcher paper over a dining room table. Below it, a new frame had been added. A candid photo someone had taken of her kneeling beside the little boy in the SUV from a few days ago, his hands pressed against the screen as she showed him how to work the dashboard. That photo was the future. At noon, the staff gathered for the monthly team meeting. No podiums, no microphones, just folding chairs in a circle, coffee and mismatched mugs, and people leaning in. Lydia stood in the center, arms folded, eyes bright. "I won't keep you long," she said, voice steady. "But I want to say this out loud because we are not going back." A few heads nodded, already knowing. This company used to run on two kinds of fuel, performance and polish. That's not enough anymore. Not if we're going to be proud of what we're building. She paused, locking eyes with each person. "From now on, we lead with presence. We treat janitors like CEOs and treat every customer like they own the place. Because, in a way, they do. They're the reason we're standing here." Tyrell chimed in, lifting his cup. "And don't assume anything about anyone, especially the woman in sneakers." Everyone laughed, even Lydia. She raised her own mug. "To better roads." "To better roads," the staff echoed. The meeting ended, but no one rushed off. Conversations lingered. Laughter echoed through the space, the kind of laughter that comes from a place where people finally feel safe. Later that day, a young black girl entered the showroom alone. She had a notepad in her hand and a nervous look on her face. Lydia spotted her instantly. "Can I help you?" she asked gently. The girl swallowed hard. "I'm doing a school project on businesswomen. I looked you up. I read about you." Lydia smiled. "Then you're already halfway to the top." The girl blinked. "Could I ask you some questions?" "You just did," Lydia replied with a wink. "Come on, I'll give you the tour." As they walked the floor, Lydia spoke not just of cars, but of courage, of being underestimated, of the weight and joy of building something no one thought you could. The girl wrote furiously, her eyes wide, her pencil shaking. Before she left, she asked, "What's the one thing you'd tell someone like me?" Lydia paused. "I'd say, never wait for permission to own the space you're in. Act like it's already yours." The girl smiled and ran out to meet her mother, notebook clutched to her chest like a treasure. As the door swung shut behind them, Lydia stood for a moment, alone in the middle of her empire, surrounded by chrome and glass and the sound of honest work humming all around her. She had gone undercover to expose the cracks. But in the end she found something even better, as she'd turned a car showroom into a sanctuary. And this time, nobody was ever getting turned away again.